Saturday's final sees the two most decorated nations in the history of the Rugby World Cup go head to head. My name is Mark, let's talk rugby. The Rugby World Cup final, New Zealand versus South Africa. This one is in the Stade de France in Saint-Denis on the outskirts of Paris. It's on Saturday, the 28th of October. Kickoff at 8 p.m. BST. This is world number 2 versus world number 1. It doesn't get any bigger than this. And it is also only the second time that these two teams have met in a final. The first time was way back in 1995. That famous final in Johannesburg between these two. And also your referee on Saturday is going to be Wayne Barnes. So I think most people would agree, probably the best referee knocking about at the moment. So we're going to have a look at the two teams, starting with the All Blacks. So front row, Eden de Groot, Cody Taylor and Tyler Lomax. So de Groot and Lomax, those two, they just make New Zealand's scrum something different. And having the two of them injured earlier on in the tournament wasn't ideal, but now they both seem to be back to full fitness, and they turn it into, from a decent scrum into a destructive scrum. So we're going to see how they go against the Boks front row. Cody Taylor there, we know there's plenty of competition for that starting hooker role, and he gets the nod there. So he's going to, he's been part of the best line out in the entire tournament, and keeping those darts straight is going to be something that he's going to want to keep going. Into the second row then, we've got Brodie Retallick is back into the starting berth there in the second row. I actually thought that Whitelock and Barrett looked like a really good combination last week. Having Retallick coming on to add a little bit extra was great, but maybe they out the gate they want to have all that experience from him there, because Scott Barrett is retained there. Back row then you got Frizzell, Kane and Sabaya. Sam Kane, since he come back from his injury, has had some really good games. Frizzell has looked decent as well, and Sabaya, when does he not look good? So really dangerous back row there, I think, and we've seen them. And it's not just a case of attacking the opposition ball for these guys. We saw against Ireland where, Ireland have a lot of dangerous poachers, the likes of Tyg Byrne, Peter O'Mahony, Porter, etc. These guys, if you go back and look at part of the game, these guys spent a lot of time actually getting in there and denying them access to get over there and poach, and stopped Ireland getting pretty much any poaches. Byrne didn't get a poach at all in the entire game, which is almost unheard of, and it was the work of these guys really, especially the likes of Kane getting in there as well. Onto the backs then, you got Aaron Smith at 9. Guy just seems completely reborn and rejuvenated. He's having a great tournament. Richie Mwanga, also another guy, there was doubts about his position before the tournament, but he's answered all of his critics. Mark Talea, he got left out for that quarter final, come back and was, really impressive in the semi-final, and he'll want to carry that on now in the final. The centre pairing there then of Barrett and Rico Ioane, those two really have just formed an excellent partnership. Like an area where the All Blacks were kind of struggling to find a combination that worked, and then these two just kind of just seem to click, and since then they've been inseparable. Will Jordan on the right wing, he's going to score a try, because basically all he has to do is seemingly cross the white wash in a black jersey, and he's almost guaranteed to get over for a try. You got Bowden Barrett there as well, a fullback, such like a classy player to have there for your fullback as well. Onto the bench then you got Takiaho, great backup for hooker. You got Williams and Laulala backing up the props. There is a bit of a step down for them, so it's going to be interesting to see how they go against the bomb squad in the scrum. It might be that the All Blacks are maybe a little bit ahead to start with, and then it switches over when the subs come on. But it's hard to say because the first scrum, if you get a nudge on and get it in the referee's head that the other team are causing problems, then it doesn't matter how good your props are. If the referee gets that opinion, then it's going to be hard for you to turn around. You got Sam Whitelock there covering the second row. You got Papi Leahy. He's been in great form there covering the back row as well. Finlay Christie covering 9. Damien McKenzie. He's got to be one of the most talented substitutes in the entire Rugby World Cup, or in World Rugby for that matter as well. And it's that talent and versatility I think keeps him on the bench. Anton Leonard-Brown then will cover some other back positions as well. So that's your All Blacks team. Pretty impressive there. On to then the Boks. So I thought the Boks might have been tempted, like Rassie and Neighbour might have been tempted to actually switch around who was going to start in props, but he's kept faith with Kitshoff and Malherbe. I still think, I have a lot of time for both of these guys. I think they're both amazing players, but I don't think they've been as good as the replacement props. So I think for South Africa to retain their title, these guys are going to step up and give them a good platform in that first half. Mbonambi, there was a whole furore about some kind of racial slur towards Tom Curry at the end. I think it was the end of the last game, right, against England, but he's been cleared to play in this one. I don't know what went on with that. All I'll say is, I don't like anyone throwing around racist slurs at all. So, but World Rugby said there wasn't enough there to have an investigation on it. So I guess we just leave it there. On to the second row then. You got Eben Etzebeth there. They weren't shy hooking him off for Snyman, were they, last week? And, Eben, you're probably gonna be something similar where he's asked to put in just a big shift for 45 to 50 minutes for them to try and lift that trophy again. Franco Mostert, he's been excellent. There's been huge competition for second row spots, and he's the guy that kind of rose above the others. Literally in the line-out, he's been very good at competing. They're going to have to compete on the New Zealand line-out because New Zealand have been so good on that. And you can't just give them like a free ride in that, in terms of, because it's been such a good platform for them. Back row then you got Sia Khaleesi, Peter Steptoe, Dwayne Vermeulen, all class players. Khaleesi, had that injury and come back, and the guy is just superhuman, I'd have to say. Peter Steptoe and Dwayne Vermeulen, we talked about before, how as they've gotten fitter as the tournament has gone on, their performances have improved, but I think they're going to have to go up another step in this one as well. Onto the backs then, you got Faf de Klerk comes in for Reinark, who drops completely out of the squad. Hundred Pollard is in for Lebok, who also drops completely out of the matchday squad. So huge calls there at halfback. But these are the guys that they had to bring on in the semi-final to get them over the line. So you can see why they went for that. But Pollard, he's going to kick. He's going to get his kicks, and he's going to kick his team around the field as well. But in terms of running a back line, he's not going to be as good as Lebok. But you still got some dangerous players out there. All he's got to do is get the ball in their hands and let them do it at times as well. You got Cheslin Colby there on left wing, who's looked back to his best. You got Dale Endy and Creel in the centres. That's going to be some battle with them. Jordy Barrett and Ricky Ioane against these two. Sparks going to fly. Curtly Arendse, the form winger coming into this Rugby World Cup, and has maintained his form throughout as well. So he's another one, kind of like Will Jordan, that you might expect to actually get over for a try in this. Damian Willemse retained at 15 as well. all the way up, even through the pool stages, it was himself and LaRue kind of switching in and out. But now he seems to have nailed down that 15 jersey. Onto the bench then, it's a 7-1 split. So, 7-1 split comes back. I'm sure some people will be complaining about rugby values or some bullshit like that. Listen, we talked about this before in a separate video when they did it the first time. I don't care, honestly. Listen, you've got rules about you've got to have a hooker and you've got to have two props who can play either side of the scrum on your bench. And after that, there's no rules about what's on your bench. So pick 8 forwards if you want. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter to me. It shouldn't matter to you. It shouldn't matter to anyone in terms of what their split is on the bench. Other than as a discussion point to talk about, not something to say, oh, that should be banned. Why should it be banned? That's stupid. Like what happens then if, let's say, three of their back line go down, right? So you end up, Willie LaRue has to come on and he covers the first spot, right? Second man down, you probably maybe Smith, right? You stick him somewhere as well, and then you probably bring Furey on to cover the last one, I'd imagine, right? So, does it really matter, in the bigger scheme of things? So let's just leave that for now. Anyway, Dion Furey, he's covering hooker, but we've seen him coming into the back row when he comes on, so that might continue on this one. He might switch to hooker later on. You got Oxenche and Trevor Nkanye. Again, I think both of these have been the best props for the Springboks throughout the tournament. Jean Klein comes onto the bench. He's what a resurrection from him as well. He represented Ireland in 2019. He didn't get picked for the Ireland squad, but there was a little bit of maybe they knew something about that he was going to get offered to go back to the box and decided not to pick him because of that. That's at least my feeling on it. But fair play to him. It's great to see a player. He hadn't been picked for Ireland for 3 years, so he was eligible, and to make an appearance in a Rugby World Cup final on the back of that is just an amazing story. Another amazing story, Orji Snyman came back from injury, and the guy has been just phenomenal. And again, he's one of these, he's similar to Peter Steptoe and Vermeulen in that the fitter he's getting, the more impact he's having. That amazing try last week, and what bets him coming off and having a massive impact on this one as well. Quagga Smith, that guy is so good over the ball, and late on, if he gets on, wins a couple of crucial penalties, could be a deciding factor as well for his team. Jasper Visa there, he's been in great form, but just hasn't been able to get into the matchday squads. You got Willie LaRue there who can come on and cover. He's going to have to cover most of the back line, really, isn't he? So where he come on wherever he needs to, really, in the end. But those are the teams. You'll have a quick look at some stats as well. I do have a separate stats video that's covered these stats, and some of these stats that I'm going to give you here, so maybe go check that out if you want to see a bit more stats. It covers Argentina, England, New Zealand, South Africa, covers the semi-final games, and covers them for the tournament as a whole as well. So set piece I think is going to be big in this one, so we'll have a look at those stats. South Africa, they went 88% in the scrum against England. New Zealand went 100%, but it was only 4 from 4, so not a huge, not a huge array to look at from their point of view against Argentina. Line out then, 95% from them. They went to 18 from 19. That is massive. The Springboks is 19 lineouts as well, but they only actually retained 15 of them for 79%. So All Blacks on top there. And then if you look at the tournament as a whole, it kind of looks that way too. All Blacks have gone 86% in the scrum for the entire tournament. The Boks are at 80%, but that has been increasing as the tournament has gone on, and the impact of that bench has bumped that number up. I think the lineouts though, New Zealand 97% for the entire tournament. That is just amazing. Like, they've only lost 2 lineouts in the entire Rugby World Cup to date. So Springboks, they're definitely going to have to change that to take that away, to at least try to take that away as a really good platform for the All Blacks on attack. Themselves, they've gone 88% in their line-out, and we're seeing some of the best line-out operators in the world going head-to-head, not just in the starting teams, but on the bench as well. So I think that's going to be really interesting. For the entire tournament then, New Zealand, they carried for 4.96 metres per carry, and the Boks 4.83. These are the two top teams in terms of meters per carry in the entire tournament. So there's going to be plenty of go forward when these guys, and there's going to be huge collisions as well. You can just, you can almost see the sparks flying really when these two, when you imagine them kind of clashing. Gain of success then, All Blacks have had 61% to 53 from the Springboks, so All Blacks have been the best team at that as well in the tournament. Boks are going to have to shut that down as best they can. And then in terms of like getting over that gain line as well, we saw Mark Talley in the semi-final. He made 101 metres, and he also made 11 carries over the gain line. So that guy came back and had an amazing impact after being left out for the quarter-final, and he's going to hope to have as big an impact in the final as well. We'll look at one final stat as well before we move on, and this one is we're just going to look at penalties conceded. So over the entire tournament, the New Zealand have conceded 55 penalties to the Springboks 48. So 7 penalties difference between them. So that's roughly an average one more penalty per game by the All Blacks. But over the entire tournament, the All Blacks have got 1 red card and 4 yellow cards. A lot of those though have been for high hits, so it kind of skews it. It's not just a case of this many penalties equals this many cards, but the Springboks, for the 48 penalties, have only gotten 1 yellow card in the entire tournament, so they've had the cleanest record with the referee so far. They're going to have to do that again with Wayne Barnes as well on Saturday to have to really give themselves a chance to win. But who do I think is going to win this one? So this is almost like the quarterfinals again. So the quarterfinals I found really hard to pick a winner of any of the quarterfinals, because I just look at them and thought those two teams are too close together. And these two, I look at them and think these two teams are too close together. But I've got to pick a winner, and for no other reason than I cover URC, and I know a lot of these players a little bit better because I've watched them week in, week out, because I'm a rugby tragic, and I watched, I didn't watch every URC game last year, but I probably watched upwards of 70% of the URC games. So I saw most of the games for all of the South African teams throughout the season, and because of that, I'm going to plumb for South Africa in this one. But, it's another game. It's a weird one. I'm going to be going in as kind of a neutral, and there's players I like on both teams. So going to be kind of watching and thinking, okay, I hope that player has a good game. I hope this player has a good game. And that's kind of the way I look at a lot of these games. Is I never want to go in and see like a team just falling flat on their face. I'd rather see two teams both at the height of their powers and producing, a really memorable final. And so that's what I'm hoping for, at least on Saturday, is a final that we can put up there next to the quarterfinals from this year. If it's anywhere near that quality, we're in for a treat.